30 Odd Minutes is sponsored in part by Digital Dowsing. Who are you powered by?
For the next 30 minutes, we will explore the unexplained. From mysteries beyond our galaxy to ghostly phenomena in our own backyard. We will dive into our psychic abilities and explore everything from conspiracies to the just plain weird. Welcome to 30 Odd Minutes. If the truth is out there, we will find it. But only by sheer accident.
Hey! Hey, welcome. Welcome to 30 Odd Minutes. We have set the mothership down right here into the fiery depths of hell because we're talking about Satan. It's going to be a scary, controversial, and evil night, but that's how it goes sometimes. Of course, want to say hello to our crew in the control center. Matt and Andrew, how are you guys? Matt? Andrew? Oh, dear God. I'm all alone. Drek? I'm a little nervous. All right. I have no crew tonight, but I've got Eric in the engine room. Eric, you okay?
Kind of.
That's good enough for me, good enough for me. Okay, it's been quite a paranormal week in the news. We had a video that surfaced about a Bigfoot sighting out in Provo, Utah. Take a look at this video. This is Provo Canyon, October 2012. These guys are camping near Squaw Peak and Little Rock Canyon Overlook when they saw a deer run up the hill. They rolled their cameras and you can see this creature. It looks very much like a bear. Then it stands up, and we're going to see it a couple times. It's going to play in slow motion here. And stands up, and our illustrious cameramen here turn tail and run, really making the news. Because on the one hand, the reaction seems very genuine, right? It's not lingering. It's not a lingering shot. They're not overacting. It's just simply genuine fear, and they run for it. On the other hand, we don't really have a very crystal clear picture of this, and I don't think the guys had any beef jerky or anything to kind of lure the Sasquatch out. So it's making the rounds. And believers will believe, doubters will doubt. But what it does, and this is the best part of all this, it promotes the discussion. It gets people talking about what could be out there and what might not be out there, and so on and so forth. And it gets lots of people going to the region looking for whatever it is these guys saw. Either way, they claimed it stood up. It seemed too tall and too broad-shouldered to be something like a bear. But we don't know. But we love this stuff. We live for it, the mystery. And the mystery is what it's all about. Speaking of mystery, I was raised a good Catholic boy. I will probably be going to hell for tonight's show alone. That and all the other stuff. But that's how it goes. But think about it. Lucifer, the devil, Satan. He goes by many names. But the concept is the same no matter what. We're talking about the ruler of the underworld. But where does he come from? How has he evolved? How has he influenced art and music and society? Tonight we're going to talk about all this and this charming but enigmatic and often evil figure with the author of the book, I, Lucifer, exploring the archetype and origins of the devil. Our guest is a Satanist, a radio host, and the author of numerous books. Please welcome live from Indiana, Corvis Nocturnum. Hey! How are you,
Hello,
sir?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you for joining us on a spaceship. I mean, this has got to be something new for you.
Yes, actually, it's a first.
Excellent.
I'm a pretty jaded individual. I've experienced a lot and met a lot of interesting people.
Well, good. Well, we're glad to have you here. Let's start at the very beginning. Who is the devil?
The devil is, in my objectivist point of view, an archetype only. He is a symbol that other people want to place, basically in a nutshell, the boogeyman.
Okay.
All the bad and wicked traits that they want to project from themselves, that they think, feel, and instinctively do, onto an entity.
So, wouldn't you agree that most of our understanding of this, of who Satan is, comes from the Bible, the Judeo-Christian text?
The predominant religion of the world, yes. But I think that it's misguided and rather egocentric for people to assume that that is the end-all, be-all, when there has been many cultures, many religions for hundreds to thousands of years prior to Christianity that had a similar figure that influenced the Christian concept of the devil.
So what's interesting, and I want to talk about that. Let's talk about like Hades, you know, the god of the underworld, you know,
Yes.
which not necessarily evil, right? It's just It's just is what it is.
He was a necessary facet. If you want to be honest, what the Egyptians truly did is they took aspects of God, the devil, and everything in between, and basically splintered it into pantheistic, which is the same thing that the Greeks and Romans and so many other pagan religions did around the same time period. And they just gave personality traits that man already had, or powers of nature that they couldn't explain, and gave those attributes to deities.
Right. Now, moving into the Bible, we're talking about a fallen angel. You sent us some great images, the traditional fallen angel, this evil winged creature that was pushed out of heaven and now rules the underworld. At what point does the go from just being God of the underworld to this evil creature?
Well, I think that was mostly a Christian concept. Mm-hmm. They needed an opposite, a yin for the yang, so to speak. I mean, but if you ask very heavy scholars in theology, the God of the Old Testament had these same traits of anger, wrath, and he ordered the deaths of children through different plagues and angels visiting the earth. So I think what happened eventually in my own research, I mean, the book does clearly say in the introduction that I'm trying to be as objectivist and not projecting any one particular religion over the other. I want to clarify that in the beginning.
Now, you are a Satanist, and we will get there. We will get there a little bit later. I want to build up to that. So you're coming at this from a Satanist perspective, which is fascinating. There's so much to cover. It's going to go quick. But so let's talk about at some point. Why do you think we need a devil? Why culture? I mean, we're speaking in broad strokes here. Why do you think we need a devil in our lives?
I think we need something. Mankind has always needed boxes to place things into. The way our minds work, we need ritual, we need explanations. We always question things. In order to understand concepts, we have to label them, and we have to separate them and compartmentalize them. And I think the devil is the key Jungian archetype out of all the collective unconscious to paint everything negative that we feel and think. But the broader-minded objectivist, rationale will say that it is merely the counterbalance to everything that man needs.
Right. But at the same time, some people are drawn to this figure. There are indeed devil worshippers, people who worship this evil figure and pray to them the same way Christians pray to Jesus or a God or whatever. When does that come about? Do you think that's just kind of a leftover thing from paganism that's pulled into modern day?
I don't believe it was a pagan concept to worship a devil figure. I mean, it's splitting hairs, but there are some very clear, distinct differences that I explain in the book. That, yes, there were pagans that worshipped Hades and other deities of that type, but to them they were not evil. They were a necessary aspect of all of the deities that they worshipped. As far as moving forward in time, worshipping a devil per se actually didn't really show its head until the Cathars and the early Luciferians around the time after the early Crusades. And that was the inverse Christians. They basically flipped everything around from Catholicism. Whereas in modern times, we want to just say that devil worshippers and Satanists are merely, anti-Christian people, whereas Luciferians of today versus true Satanists, members of the Church of Satan, are two totally different animals, whereas Luciferians truly believe there is an entity known as the devil.
Right.
The Church of Satan doesn't even acknowledge that he's ever existed at all.
Right, and we're going to get there. We are absolutely going to get there because we're going to talk about Anton LaVey. We're going to get there too. But before we get a little bit too far, why do you think our society? I mean, you answered why we need this devil figure, but he shows up in an awful lot of art and literature, and has for a long time. Yes. This is not new. This isn't just the last 100 years. This is centuries of art, of music, of literature, and so on. This figure comes up again and again. Why are we drawn to him in that way? This
is basically where I come from. we feel that the devil is a necessary primeval aspect of man's passions. The unrestrained feelings, it's intellectual, it's pride, it's rebellion. All of these things have to do with the intellectual mind and the creative side. To many people, the devil represents not just evil, but rebellion and the spirit and passion of exploring all of humans' emotions, not just the beneficial, peaceful, calm side, but we have to tap into that other aspect of ourselves to fully embrace life.
Right. And, I've seen interviews with, various actors who talk about playing sinister characters. And how what comes up again and again, it was Ricardo Montalban, I'm sorry, but that's who it was, it just is. I don't quote him often. In fact, this has to be a first. He was talking about playing an evil character and how they have to be charming. They have to be so charming and nice, because the devil's never so kind as to just, wear a black cape and come up and just be breathing fire, right? That the real evil would be to be very charming and earn your trust and then stab you in the back. And so it's fascinating to me. Great villains throughout plays and throughout, film and cinema, things like that, have always been charming. And the devil is so charming. Think of the Rolling Stones song and so on.
Right. I used a clip of that for part of the chapter that I wrote because it really stood out to me watching an Interview with the Vampire when that was at the ending credits, that I believe even Anne Rice, there's a lot of comparisons between vampires and the devil. They're both seductive, they're both charming, they're both powerful, they have mastery over the darker arts and things like that, and they offer gifts to man, whether it's wisdom from the devil or immortality from vampires. I think one of the key things to remember, like you were talking about being charming and normal, not just horrific, one of my favorite movies of all time is The Devil's Advocate with Al Pacino.
Yeah, sure.
Where he said, "I'm a fan of man," and all he did was offer Lomac everything he ever wanted. In exchange, he just wanted his loyalty and to bring him into the family. And to me, from what I've been able to piece together and research, basically, The Devil's Advocate is nothing more than a retelling, in a way, of Milton's classic story.
Right, of course. And there's so many portrayals of what hell is. Now, it's Dante's Inferno, of course, is just this great piece of literature where all the various levels of hell that you go to, where the liars are and the cheats and the murderers and so on. And you think about how horrific hell is always described. It's a lake of fire, it's ice, it's cold, it's being withdrawn from God and so on. It's always portrayed as this horrible, horrible place. But you're right, the allure is you benefit now. The rest of your life is rewarded with whatever, degradation, sin, riches, and who cares what comes next, because you don't really know. And I think that plays on a factor, because we talk about the paranormal a lot on this show. We talk about ghosts and things like that. The question you're asking when you're talking about ghosts is, and religion often, is that what comes next? What comes after we die? And ghosts allow us to explore that in a remarkably tangible way. There's Grandma. She died 3 weeks ago, but she's standing here. It's really...
it's comforting for people to have something that they can relate to.
Of course it is. And those of us that seek this stuff out, we're trying to get something we can wrap our hands around, metaphorically speaking, to take back with us. And so I wonder, when you're talking about, the allure... Is jumping into Satanism now, is giving yourself to that, giving yourself to, whatever the promise is, the riches, the money, the women, in exchange for something that you really don't know. It's almost like it's like a no-brainer bet, I guess, for some people, right?
Well, if you don't truly subscribe that there is an afterlife and nothing to lose,
right.
It sounds really selfish and egocentric for people to say that Satanism is a selfish religion, and it is. But I think people are missing the point when you can turn around and say, look at it from a pragmatic point of view. If you're always giving away everything and suffering, you're not setting a very good example for your children. You should be healthy, you should be happy, you should be wealthy in order to better provide as a parent. And a lot of people during lectures that I give at colleges kind of look at me stunned. They had no idea that there are positive aspects to this archetype that they could tap into and utilize for the betterment of themselves, and therefore they become an example for the rest of the world and society, because if we want the finer things, we work hard for them. We're not sponging off of the rest of society.
Right. So let's talk about Anton LaVey, because this is a line in the sand for Satanism. Here's a picture of him, of course. Tell us about the birth. There he is. Tell us about the birth of Satanism, the religion, through Anton LaVey.
Well, Anton LaVey actually codified these ideals. What he did is he took the archetype of the devil more than anybody else, not just from Christianity, but from every culture, and occultism and different aspects like that. And he basically codified it. He put it all together, and he was a very big fan of the social Darwinism, of Nietzsche, of Ayn Rand, and objectivism, where she was the ultimate skeptic. He was all for capitalism, man pursuing their wants, needs, artistic endeavors, and he was in love with music, and he had wild animals for pets, and he loved his children. And so all the things that the media liked to portray about him in the early days, especially as, you Satanists are, child killers and, sacrifice animals to the devil. And he laughed and he said, no, it was Christians and pagans who sacrificed, living things to their deities. Both of those cultures did, whereas true Satanists from the 1960s forward did none of those things. We think it's a waste of precious life.
Right. Now, this is the fascinating thing that I learned years ago, but a Satanist is an atheist, correct? There's no consequence.
Pretty much. I would have to say that we are plain old boring atheists that are skeptics, but we enjoy exploring the unknown and the macabre and the occult simply because it's fascinating. You could truthfully say that we're a boring religion of just philosophy on how to live a better life and enjoy ourselves. We just like the cool Addams family trappings that go along with the ritual.
Don't we all? I mean, a little. I mean, I do too, I admit. Now, I had read, and forgive me, I forget who it was, but to be indoctrinated into one particular, and maybe this is for everyone, please, enlighten us. You had to write a note saying, I sell my soul, I hereby give my soul to the devil. No, but wait now, this was not, and it was not so much a contract, it was a liberating thing to say there's no soul to give, so you write that and you're free. You write that down and you're free of the thought behind it. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, to be blunt, we don't believe we have a soul to sell in the first place, so if it ever did exist like that, it would be just tongue-in-cheek as a ritual more than anything. So I've never personally heard of that happening before. Right. From anyone that I know, I thought that was just like an internet rumor or whatever.
And it could be. I read the internet a lot.
Since Satan is compared to heroes in classic epics, such as Milton and Dante's Inferno, Paradise Lost, that sort of thing, we just see him as a Jungian dark archetype of power and what we can gain. But I'm kind of amused that in our day of technology and resources, we're not much different as an overall for the 60% of the population that believe in a God and a devil, that we're not much farther removed than we were during the so-called Age of Enlightenment in the early days.
Right. So, was there any kind of ceremony for you? I mean, I had heard in an interview you were raised Protestant, correct?
Yes, and people want to often look at me kind of funny, like, wow, you were, going to church and everything like that, and now you're, what you are. And how did you go from being this good little Protestant to, something tragic must have happened to you, everybody wants to say. And I'm like, nope. My grandmother just looked at me one day, and she said, I don't need a preacher telling me from the pulpit how to read a book. I can do it for myself. And she was a little bit of a feisty character playing vaudeville, and she was very creative and passionate herself in the different endeavors she did. So she was kind of an inspiration. She loved the Bermuda Triangle and Bigfoot and UFOs, and I was greatly influenced by her and my Masonic grandfather, as well.
And so at what point do you say, like, is it, what's the decision like? Take us through that, where you say, this is for me. You just wake up and do it? I mean, is that like...
I was exploring all different things. Nothing tragic happened to me that turned me against Catholicism in general. I mean, I did a report on the Crusades, and I thought, how horrible is it for two of the world's biggest, Abrahamic religions to kill each other for hundreds of years over the quibbling little details, that I really didn't want any part of that, but at the same time I wanted to explore other paths, other religions. So I got together with a group of like-minded people in the local area, and we had I guess you call it a coven or a grotto, and everybody was a totally different faith. We had a Buddhist, we had a Satanist. He wasn't a member of the Church of Satan, but he was interested in it. And we had a few just regular, generic, ordinary pagans thrown in the mix. And the Satanist looked at me and he says, you're reading Nietzsche and, you're questioning everything, but you like the occult. I think you're more of a Satanist. And I said, what is that? I had no idea.
Yeah.
I was new to it. Anton LaVey was, close to dead at that time, but, and yet I had never heard of it. As much as it had been in the news when I was younger, it's like it was a foreign concept. But as soon as I read the Satanic Bible, I was going, this is just a book of common sense. So
Right.
it definitely appealed to me, and I like the dark vampire trappings and things like that. That the Gothic aesthetic, so to speak, that they tap into, because that appeals very much to my love of horror and other books that I've written since.
Right.
So I just kind of put it all together.
So let's talk about what is reality, which I know that's a question that we've been trying to define for thousands of years. So if an archetype is so powerful that everybody understands it, like the Jungian archetypes across the world, where people from every culture have an understanding of it, at some point, what's the difference between that and reality? Like, what's the difference between this devil that we've collectively created through thousands of years of folklore, legend, myth, religious teachings, influence of pop culture and so on, and what makes that any less real than a creature that truly, lives beneath the earth and wants to eat our soul?
Well, we've done a lot of digging, and scientists have gone pretty much to the core of the Earth as far as we can, and we haven't encountered anything physical and tangible. So, until someone proves to me without a shadow of a doubt that something intangible exists, I'll remain a skeptic. But in regards to the other, I think that it just proves that collectively humanity needs archetypes and aspects that we're still primitive to some degree. We need to have that trait to identify with and to tap into.
Right.
I think that there is a very fine line between what we think and feel versus what becomes reality, because everything in science fiction eventually becomes reality. Like, I guess it was Shatner, said something about a communicator from Star Trek in the 60s, and then he pulls out a cell phone and he says, close enough.
Right.
So, it does have a very faint line. I don't know where that line truly exists, but I think if there ever was a, Satan, so to speak, it is a dark primordial force that humanity not only taps into, but they helped create it. Not physically, but they created the aspects of it, molding it by the collective thought.
And that's what's so interesting to me about... forget all the religious mumbo jumbo. Go to a rock concert, right? There's a vibe that some bands can create. That's an amazing energy that's within a room. Some entertainers are masterful at it. They can go into a room. Speakers, public speakers too. There's people that can go in and grab a whole room. And yet there's other times, there's times it works and there's times it doesn't work. I know from experience. And so you wonder, what is that? Is that a collective energy that everybody's contributing to? And is that any less real than the chair you're sitting in?
No, I don't believe it's too much different, other than it has a solid, tangible feel to it, because it didn't exist previously. It was generated in mass.
Right.
I mean, I've been to conventions and colleges where there's 200-300 people sitting in a room staring at me, and I feel uneasy. But once the energy starts building up and people start sharing that rapport back and forth, you do tend to feel something almost palpable in the area. And I'm not going to sit there and naysay it, as a skeptic completely and say, nothing has changed. It clearly has.
Right.
But what science can't do is explain every aspect about it, and that, I think, is what the fine line is between superstition and supernatural, because from an objectivist and occult background, they seem like two different things, but in Satanism, the metaphysical is purely things that we haven't found a rational explanation to. We're not saying it doesn't exist at all.
Right.
We're just saying prove it to us.
Yeah, that's the funny thing, right? So, I mean, as a speaker, as I am, you know there's that thing. You can feel it in your bones. The audience can feel it, but you can't measure it.
Right.
Sometimes you can't reproduce it, though you try when you have a good night, And yet, it comes and goes. But it's this thing, and it's this thing that speaks to our guts, that part of our self that's not intellectual at all, that part that's down here, not up here. And I think when you're talking about religious stuff, I mean, there's probably some people watching this tonight who are really uncomfortable. You're an articulate guy. You make a lot of sense, and they're going, "This is counter to everything I was taught," and that's a feeling down here, not up here.
I mean, I think in a way, intellectually, people understand, oh, well, this is rational, what he's saying makes sense, but as a feeling from what they've been, indoctrinated into, it makes them uneasy because they start questioning things even subconsciously to themselves. And I'm not trying to shake or turn anyone away from their religion. I'm saying at least just be open-minded to the new experiences and peoples that you'll meet in your lifetime.
Right. Okay, so we put a question out on Twitter earlier today just to get a feel for what's out there. Here's the question. Take a look. Tweets of the week. There's the sound. Ha, we're rusty, Eric. All right, the question was, do you believe there's a devil? If so, why? We got some great tweets. This is what they had to say. Wayne said, yes, because my buddy wakes up next to her every morning. Good one, Wayne. Kristen said, if there was not a devil, then there would not be a God. Nature is balanced, so yes, I believe in the devil. Of course, yin and yang. Makes sense. Gregory, the devil is real, and according to Charlie Daniels, he lives near Georgia. Actually, he lives in Georgia, Gregory, but thank you very much for that. Have you been to Georgia, Corvis?
I was in the Army National Guard and did my basic training in Fort Benning, so yes, I've been to hell.
And did you meet the devil? Did you perhaps get into a fiddle competition?
No, he didn't have a fiddle, but Drill Sergeant Fielding had a round brown hat.
Close enough. All right, real quick, you sent me another photo here of High Priest Gilmore. The date, it struck me, of course, June 6, 2006, 666. There he is doing his thing. What's the state of Satanism today?
Satanism today is, unlike what the detractors and naysayers would like to say, is we're just as powerful and prominent, but we tend to be a little more individualistic than ever before, where it's not just one central person. It has basically been branched out into where LaVey ultimately wanted it was not just him preaching to people, it's become about the members and what they accomplish. That's why, someone like myself gets appointed media representative, is because of what we've chosen to do with our lives. And whether we want to be public about it or not, we're still making a ripple effect in the world.
Amazing stuff. I think it's so interesting talking about belief systems. Corvis, we've come right up to the end of the show. The name of the book, I, Lucifer, Exploring the Archetypes and Origins of the Devil. Corvis Nocturnum will, of course, have links to your website from ours where you can find out more information. Really appreciate you taking the time to come here tonight on 30-odd Minutes and tell us about the devil, your beliefs, and where we're at today. It's a great subject.
Thank you.
All right, folks, until next time, please do stay odd. Yeah.